Planning for great podcasts. Okay, so you have chosen your niche and you have identified a number of problems that people in the niche have and know how to answer them. Surely it is time to start recording your podcast now. Well, not quite. You need to plan your podcast first. What does this mean? Well, how will you brand yourself in the world of podcasting? This is more than just selecting a great name for your podcast or getting great cover art designed. It is about how you want your listeners to know your podcast. You need to get this right as it will set you up for success. What is the mission and vision of your podcast? Before you start to record anything, you need to establish a mission and vision for your podcasts. When you have done this, then you are sure to create the right kind of content. To be sure we are on the same page here, let's define what we mean by a mission and vision. Your mission is your goal for your podcast and how you intend to achieve this goal. A vision is how you want your podcast to look in the future. Both of these are really important, so you need to spend time on this. Once you have defined your mission and vision, you can ensure that every published podcast aligns with them both. What kind of personality and voice? Your podcasts are going to be a reflection of you. They will be unique because you are unique. You don't want to sound like everybody else, do you? So how can you make sure that you avoid that? The best thing to do is to act naturally when recording your podcasts. Speak normally as you do in real life. There are no censors, and nobody is there judging you. You may want to avoid using certain words if you think that they are not going to resonate well with your audience, though. You should always come up with a catchy tagline for your podcast. Add something about your niche in your tagline and make it unique and inspiring. Take your time over this as you want a tagline that is going to persuade new listeners to try out your podcasts. Be consistent. Your personal branding is not just limited to your podcasts. It is best to be consistent with all of the platforms that you use. Use the same branding on your website or blog, your Facebook page, your YouTube channel, and any other platforms you use. Get some good-looking cover art created for your brand. If you don't have any graphic design skills, then head over to Fiverr.com and pay a few bucks to someone good to do this for you. Use this cover art on all your platforms so that your audience will instantly recognize it no matter which one they are on. If you don't do this, then you are going to confuse people. With different branding, your podcast and your social media channels, for example, your audience will not be sure that they are on the right page for your stuff. Create a community around your brand. People love communities as it provides them with a sense of belonging. The best podcasters always foster a sense of community with their listeners. As an example of this, there is a popular podcast series called Entrepreneurs on Fire by John Lee Dumas. He calls his listeners the Fire Nation to instill a sense of community. So if you're going to create a podcast about online marketing, you could call your audience the Digital Marketing Geniuses or something like that. If you are already well known on other channels and have a specific branding, then keep this going on your podcasts. Be sure to set up all of your other channels if you don't have them. You want to do everything that you can to make all of your listeners feel very special. When they tune into your podcasts, they feel great because they are a part of the Digital Marketing Genius community or whatever you have called it. So, you need to put in a bit of time planning for your podcast. This is time well spent, as your listening audience will appreciate what you are trying to do for them. A strong community will always be on your side, unless you break your own rules, and they will want you to keep producing your great podcasts for a long time. The equipment you need for podcasting. Before you create any podcasts, you need the right equipment. The worst thing that you can do is to produce podcasts where the audio quality is poor. Nobody will want to listen to them. A podcast is all about audio, and trying to record using the microphone in your laptop or the one attached to a pair of cheap headphones is out of the question. You need to think about the type of podcasting you plan to do. If you're going to have a setup where guests will appear on your podcast by dropping into your home studio, then you will need a mixer and some other gear. We do not suggest that you start this way. It can cost you a lot of money to create a mini studio like this. We recommend that you start by creating the podcast yourself and conducting interviews over an app like Skype. The advantage of doing this is that you can interview people anywhere in the world. The disadvantage is that sometimes the quality of Skype recordings varies, and the person being interviewed will need a good microphone. So, we will take a look in this video at a home setup where you will use a computer for the recordings, and then we will discuss the options for setting up a mini studio where guests can come and record a podcast with you. The simple podcast recording setup. This is the simplest form of podcast recording setup that you can do at home. You will need a computer, which you probably already have, a high-quality microphone with a pop guard, good quality headphones, and audio editing software. Most computers will be fine. You do not need a high-end computer to record good quality podcasts. Audio files are a lot smaller than video files, and if you have a reasonably modern desktop or laptop computer at the moment, this should be more than sufficient. Podcast recording with mobile devices. What about mobile devices? Well, you can record a podcast on your smartphone or tablet, but you will need a higher quality microphone than the one included in your device. There are a number of recording apps available for audio for both Android and iOS devices, so mobile device recording is certainly a possibility. What microphone? If you're just going to use your computer for solo podcasts and Skype interviews, more on this later, then we recommend that you get a good quality USB microphone. A USB microphone will work very well with your computer. There are two different types of microphone, which are 1. Condenser, 2. Dynamic. A condenser microphone is all that you need for solo recordings. If you intend to have two people on a podcast recording into your computer, then dynamic microphones are best. You can find good quality USB microphones available on Amazon.com for a reasonable price. A couple of good examples are the Blue Yeti. There are some great accessories for this, which is a condenser microphone. The Audio-Technica ATR 2100, which is a dynamic USB/XLR microphone. If you want to record using your smartphone or tablet device, then you will need a better microphone than the one that comes with the device. You can use a lavalier microphone here, such as the Rode SmartLav Plus, which is an omnidirectional microphone that you can clip onto a lapel or a tie for good quality recordings. The Rode SmartLav Plus plugs straight into your smartphone or tablet jack. This is a good option if you plan to travel around to make podcast recordings. It will work on most Android and iOS mobile devices. Get a pop guard or pop filter. Some microphones come with a pop guard or pop filter already supplied. If your chosen microphone does not have a pop filter, then we strongly recommend that you get one, as it will improve the sound quality of your podcast significantly. Microphone stand. You will need some form of microphone stand, otherwise you will have to hold your microphone when you are recording your podcast, which is far from ideal. You can get a small desk stand for your microphone so that it sits upright on your desk. This is sufficient in most home recording situations. Another way to hold a microphone in place is to use a boom arm. These are available separately, or you can purchase them in a bundle with the microphone. The Blue Yeti microphone certainly has this option. You clamp the boom arm to a desk, and then you can move it around so that it is in the perfect position for your recordings. Good quality headphones. Although you can record a solo podcast into your computer without headphones, we recommend that you use a pair of good quality headphones for all of your recordings so that you get live feedback on the quality. You can choose between in-ear or earbud headphones or the conventional over-the-ear headphones. One of the best values for money earbuds is the Panasonic Ergo Fit. If you want to go up a notch in quality, then we recommend the One More triple driver in-ear solution. If you prefer the over-the-ear headphones, then the AKG Pro Audio AKB K92 closeback headphones provide great quality sound at a very good price. Of course, there are higher quality over-the-ear headphones available, and if you want the best, then the Grado SR352E are really up there. Audio editing software. When you record your podcasts, it is very unlikely that you will not want to make some edits to it. You may have made some mistakes that you want to cut for the final production, and you can make your podcast sound really professional by adding intro and outro music and sound effects. Well, we have some good news for you here. After spending money on a good microphone and other accessories, there is no need for you to pay for audio editing software. There are 2 free audio editing suites which provide all the tools that you need to produce high-quality podcasts. Windows computers, Audacity; Mac computers, GarageBand. There are other audio editing suites, some of which are free and others where you will need to pay for them. In all honesty, Audacity and GarageBand are all you need, so why pay for an editing suite when you don't need to? We're not going to explain how to use these audio editing suites here, as it is beyond the scope of this training. There are plenty of videos on YouTube that will show you how to use the basic and advanced features of these 2 audio editing suites. With both of these apps, you can produce your final podcast in MP3 format. If you want to do your audio editing on your smartphone or tablet device, then there are a number of free and paid apps available for this. For Android devices, there is Wave Editor, for example, and for iOS devices, you can use GarageBand or TonePad. It is not the easiest thing to do to edit your recordings on a smartphone with these apps, so a better option would be to save your initial recording in MP3 format on your phone using an app, and then copy it onto your computer and use Audacity or GarageBand. The Advanced Podcast Recording Setup. If you want to create a podcast recording studio, then you will need some additional gear. You will need to use dynamic microphones with an XLR connector for plugging into a mixer. You will also need the mixer, maybe a preamp, a digital recorder, and a number of boom arms to hold the microphones in place. The idea here is that you will create your podcast using the mixer and digital recorder and then transfer the recording onto your computer so that you can perform your edits with Audacity or GarageBand. To create a podcasting studio like this is going to take some serious investment, so you need to be sure that this is the way you want to go. This is an ideal setup if you are in a good location where guests can easily drop in and participate in podcasts with you. Planning great podcasts. Before you start to record your first podcast, you need a plan for it. Podcasts recorded on the fly rarely turn out that well. You need to prepare for each podcast to ensure that things go as smoothly as possible. You don't need to spend hours on a podcast plan. Investing a small amount of time into a plan will make a huge difference to the quality of each of your podcasts. So let's get started, shall we? Organize your podcasts. You're not going to record just one podcast, so it is a good idea to get organized so that you can plan and record your podcasts on a regular basis. There are no strict rules for how many podcasts you should create a month, but always remember that it is not a good idea to keep your listeners waiting too long or they will find another person's podcast to listen to. We recommend that you have a content calendar for your podcasting activities. You have the option of good old-fashioned pen and paper here, or you can use technology. If you prefer technology, then we recommend that you use Google Calendar. There are paid options available, but the free Google Calendar will do everything that you need. With Google Calendar, you can add a description to the entries that you make. So, you can add the topic of each podcast for the next few weeks, for example. You can even attach files to your calendar event if you want to. Just do whatever you need to do to be organized with your podcast planning and recording. What will you talk about? You need to spend the most time planning what you are going to talk about on your podcast. If you get this wrong, then it doesn't matter how much fancy equipment you have, your podcast will be a disaster. Always bear in mind that your podcasts are for your listeners, so you need to provide recordings that your target audience will really care about. Do your homework here and find out what your audience wants. You can ask yourself the following questions to help you here. What questions do your listeners have? What problems do your listeners have? What things are your listeners struggling with right now? Use an answer to one of these questions in your podcasts. One way that you can easily find out what your audience is looking for is to do some keyword research. Using the free Google Keyword Planner, you can discover the search terms that people in your niche are using to find answers to their questions and problems. Keyword research is a really good idea because you can create a list of relevant keywords for your niche that you not only use for podcast episodes, but also for optimizing your listings when you distribute your recordings. We will talk about this more later in this training. Another way that you can come up with content for your podcast is by brainstorming. If you're going to record a podcast with other people, then ask them for their ideas as well. You'll get a better result if you use their ideas as well as yours. Use a mind map if you're going to record solo. This will help you to think through all the ideas with your initial podcast and can even help you with coming up with themes for future podcasts. Create a script for your podcast. Some of you might not like the idea of creating a script for your podcast, but it really will help you. If you're an expert in your niche, then you may not need a full script to follow. Just write down the important points that you want to cover and then use these as prompts. You will need to be pretty confident to record a good podcast using prompts. When you write a detailed script, it provides you with a really tight way to create a podcast that is packed with value. Reading a full script will prevent you from rambling on and will also ensure that you cover everything in your podcast. There are a couple of problems with a detailed script, though. First is the amount of time and effort that it will take you to write it. Second is that a detailed script can stop you from being spontaneous and prevent you from adding your personality into the recording. We recommend that you create a couple of test podcasts by using a prompt script and a detailed script and see which one suits you the best. Listen critically to the two test recordings and check for coverage of points and ramblings. In the end, practice is the best solution. After a while, you will find the best form of script for you to create the best podcasts. It is better that you have some form of script than no script. Even if you have a great memory, the pressure of making the podcast recording can lead you to forget certain points that you really wanted to cover. Start off by using a detailed script, and then see if you can get by with a prompt script as you gain more podcasting experience. Recording online interviews. Your listeners will usually look forward to interviews that you have agreed with your experts in your niche. If your expert lives far away, then the best solution is to record your conversation using an online app. There are a few good apps out there that you can use for this. Skype. Skype is an extremely popular online call app that has improved significantly over the years. A lot of people have Skype accounts, so check with your interviewee ahead of time so that they can quickly set up a Skype account for free if they don't have one. There are a number of apps available for recording Skype calls and creating MP3 files from these. There's actually a feature now in Skype to record calls. Once you have started your call, you can start recording and both parties are notified that recording has begun. You can stop the recording at any time, or it will automatically stop at the end of the call. When the recording is finished, Skype creates an MP4 file and adds it to the chat window where you can download it. You will then have to convert this into an MP3 file for audio editing. At the time of creating this training, all recordings are in mono format only. This is not great for balancing recording levels in your audio editor. The next level up for Skype call recording is either Talk Helper for Windows computers or Call Recorder for Mac computers. You will have to pay a small premium for these apps, but it is worth it. They will record both parties in separate channels so that you can volume balance. You also get the recording as an audio file. Zoom. Zoom is more sophisticated than Skype as it is more like a video conferencing tool. All you need to do is use Zoom to set up a room and send the generated link to the other person so that they can sign into the call. All calls using Zoom are automatically recorded and you will receive an audio file when the call is ended. You can set up the recording so that it will record the two parties on different channels, which is great for editing. If you are only recording with one other person, then a Zoom call is free. Whenever you're going to record an interview using a call over Skype, Zoom, or any other method, you should plan the questions that you are going to ask and agree with this with the interviewee prior to recording the interview.